it is already time to start talking about the super long-range forecast for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and the box office take. And let's talk about the loosest and most wide window in terms of what's deemed acceptable that I've ever seen. I think most of you guys know that I've always been a fan of the numbers game when it comes to marketing, sales, profits, and all that. I've been talking about it for so long that it honestly, if you listen to the podcast, you've known this for a while. I always like to get into those specific things because it's interesting to analyze how these things happen and what could have caused such a, downfall or discrepancy or a huge amount of overhead on something. There's so many factors that go into it. Of course, one of the best indicators for what you can expect in terms of box office is the early forecasts. Now, again, these are somewhat hard to gauge because pre-pandemic, we'd be in this area where you would have almost like what is a safe equation. And it's how people generally got their prediction. Now, again, I don't want to go into all the specifics, but you have to look at social media engagement, shares of specific things, engagement with traction in terms of the numbers and minutes watched and the discussion, impressions. There's so much, but again, people use this, companies, analytics use this to kind of set expectations for what's happening. Box office is the big one, right? The big box office opening weekend, because in turn, when the studio gets reports, they kind of know if they need to amp up the anticipation by providing more money to marketing, or if the film has hit its ceiling and its limit. Doctor Strange is an interesting one because they're coming off of Spider-Man, but they still got the other MCU films that came right before it, Eternals and Shang-Chi. And of course, then you have the Batman, which is on the other side, and you have to factor everything in. And the earliest numbers I've seen that are already being tossed out there by a couple people I've talked to separately from different places is what I would call the safest unsafe I've ever seen. And just to put it into perspective, and I can't name anybody, obviously that's not what you're supposed to do, but I've literally gotten 3 reports so far from 3 different people, and the low end is 50 million, the high end is 175. Now, the high end, the 175 is the ceiling if it breaks all expectations and goes far beyond the actual. It'll probably top off here, which is about 145. But again, you just don't know. And that's kind of the thing I'm looking at here. The super long range forecast for this thing is honestly, it's interesting because, is it going to make $50 million only? No, it's going to make way more than that. Is it going to make 100? Well, I don't know. Shang-Chi made 90 and Spider-Man made well over 100. So what if we just place it somewhere in the middle there and it's safe? And I think that's honestly what everybody's going to do. But don't be surprised if this thing does end up somewhat overperforming. The power of proven MCU brands and characters, I think, has something to it that not many people are considering is as big of a factor as they think.